Imagine a moment, a simple request, a quiet command, or a subtle expectation that lands in the quiet space between your intuition and your actions. You feel a flicker of doubt, a faint discord with your deepest convictions. Yet, something within you compels you to comply. You nod, you follow, you obey. This isn't about grand historical movements or distant atrocities. It's about the everyday fabric of our lives. The office cubicle, the family dinner table, the social media feed. It's about the unseen forces that sculpt our decisions, the silent architecture of our minds that prioritizes order over dissent, conformity over conviction. Why do we so often silence that inner voice, that whisper of no, to align with the perceived legitimacy of those in charge? We stand at the precipice of a profound question, one that unlocks the very essence of human behavior. What if the most formidable prison we inhabit isn't built of steel and stone, but of unquestioned assumptions and ingrained psychological pathways? This is an invitation to peer behind the curtain, to dissect the subtle cues, the cognitive biases, and the powerful social currents that shape our tendency to submit without critical thought. Prepare to unravel the intricate mechanisms of the mind, to understand the magnetic pull of hierarchy, and to discover the quiet courage required to reclaim your intellectual autonomy. This journey isn't just an exploration. It's a revelation of the self, a path to understanding why we obey, and ultimately, how to choose a different way. The human condition is riddled with a profound and often perplexing paradox. Our innate, almost instinctual tendency to submit to authority, even when its directives clash violently with our deepest held values and moral compass. This isn't merely a matter of sporadic lapses in judgment. It represents a fundamental wiring, a societal and psychological conditioning that steers us towards compliance, often bypassing the very critical thought processes we pride ourselves on possessing. The magnetic pull of conformity can be astonishingly potent, transforming individuals from independent thinkers into unwitting participants in actions that, under different circumstances, they would vehemently oppose. It compels us to silence the inner voice of dissent, to sacrifice personal conviction on the altar of perceived legitimacy and the alluring comfort of compliance. This intricate dance between personal autonomy and external command reveals layers of deeply ingrained psychological mechanisms. From childhood, we are subtly yet powerfully trained to respect and obey those in positions of power. Teachers, parents, law enforcement, employers, each figure contributes to a cumulative blueprint within our minds, establishing a default response of deference. This conditioning isn't inherently malicious. It forms the bedrock of social order and cooperation. However, its pervasive nature means that the lines between legitimate guidance and undue influence can blur imperceptibly, setting the stage for the authority trap. The uniforms, titles, and hierarchical structures that permeate our societies are not just organizational tools. They are potent symbols that activate these pre-programmed responses, often short-circuiting our rational assessment in favor of an automatic acquiescence. Consider the subtle cues that signal authority. A person in a crisp uniform, a voice that speaks with assuredness from behind a podium, a designated leader in a group setting. These elements, whether consciously recognized or not, trigger a perception of heightened credibility and expertise. We are inclined to attribute greater knowledge and moral rightness to those we deem to be in charge, creating a cognitive shortcut that saves mental effort, but can lead us far astray. The perceived legitimacy of these figures can become an intoxicating influence, not just on the individuals wielding power, but more profoundly on those subject to it. It fosters an environment where the uncomfortable questions remain unasked, where the quiet unease in our gut is overridden by the overwhelming pressure to align with the perceived correct path, dictated by those above. Beyond mere conditioning and perceived legitimacy, the fear of ostracization plays an immense role in solidifying the authority trap. Humans are social creatures, deeply wired for belonging. The prospect of standing alone, of being the sole voice of dissent against a powerful individual or a collective consensus, can be terrifying. This fear isn't always overt. It manifests as a subtle anxiety about being seen as difficult, disloyal, or unintelligent. It's the whisper that tells us it's easier to go along, to avoid conflict, to maintain the peace, even if that peace comes at the cost of our integrity. This social pressure, often unspoken, can be a more formidable barrier to independent thought than any direct command, compelling us to act against our better judgment and participate in actions that contradict our moral compass, all for the sake of fitting in. The pervasive phenomenon of groupthink amplifies this effect exponentially. When individuals are part of a collective, the responsibility for actions can feel diffused, lessening the personal burden of moral accountability. In such scenarios, the desire for group harmony often overrides realistic appraisal of alternatives, leading to irrational or dysfunctional decision-making. The collective weight of compliance makes individual dissent seem not only more difficult, but also increasingly futile. What makes us silence our inner voice of dissent in these moments? It is the intricate interplay of psychological comfort derived from conforming, the aversion to the discomfort of challenging the status quo, and the powerful, almost gravitational pull of a unified front, however misguided that front may be. Escaping this powerful trap is not about rebellion for its own sake, but about cultivating a profound intellectual autonomy. The journey begins with the conscious recognition of these invisible forces that shape our decisions. It demands a deliberate effort to peel back the layers of psychological conditioning and to meticulously examine the subtle mechanisms of obedience and conformity. We must learn to identify the triggers that bypass our critical faculties, whether they are the symbols of authority, the unspoken pressures of a group, or the subtle allure of external validation. This awareness is the foundational roadmap to reclaiming our independent thought. Cultivating critical thinking is the essential tool for dismantling the psychological frameworks that foster unquestioning submission. It involves not merely questioning authority, but questioning the premises upon which authority rests. It is about rigorously evaluating information, scrutinizing motives, and developing the capacity for independent analysis rather than passively accepting pronouncements. This means actively seeking diverse perspectives, challenging our own biases, and being comfortable with ambiguity and dissent. It means fostering an inner environment where curiosity trumps conformity and intellectual rigor takes precedence over convenient compliance. Strengthening personal integrity serves as the unwavering anchor in this turbulent landscape. It is the commitment to one's core values, a resolute refusal to compromise principles even in the face of immense pressure. This requires a deep self-awareness, a clear understanding of what we stand for, and the courage to articulate and defend those principles when they are tested. Personal integrity isn't merely a passive state, it's an active stance, a continuous process of aligning our actions with our beliefs, thereby fortifying our inner resolve against external influence. Ultimately, the power to escape the authority trap lies in developing the unwavering courage to stand firm in truth. This courage is not an absence of fear, but the conviction to act in alignment with one's moral compass, despite fear. It is the bravery to be the voice of dissent when necessary, to challenge norms and to uphold ethical standards even when it is unpopular or inconvenient. This commitment empowers us to transcend the automatic responses of obedience, fostering a generation of independent thinkers who refuse to compromise their principles. By understanding the intricate nature of the authority trap and consciously equipping ourselves with the tools of critical thinking, personal integrity, and unwavering courage, we can liberate ourselves from the shackles of unquestioning submission and truly embrace the full spectrum of our intellectual and moral autonomy. The intricate architecture of the human mind, for all its sophistication, harbors a deep-seated preference for efficiency and predictability, a trait that the authority trap expertly exploits. Our brains are remarkable pattern-matching machines, constantly seeking shortcuts to conserve cognitive energy. This drive often manifests as a reliance on heuristics, mental rules of thumb that allow for rapid decision-making but can bypass deeper analytical processing. When confronted with a figure of authority, whether by perceived status, expertise, or even sheer assertiveness, these heuristics kick in, prompting a quick assessment that defers to the perceived superior. It's an evolutionary adaptation that once served to maintain tribal cohesion and ensure survival, yet in complex modern societies, it can become a vulnerability, causing us to outsource our critical faculties to external directives. The mental effort required to challenge, to question, to critically evaluate is substantial. It demands sustained attention, a weighing of alternatives, and a willingness to tolerate ambiguity. All activities that our brains are, by default, wired to minimize for the sake of energy conservation. This subtle, almost imperceptible drift into compliance is rarely a sudden leap. More often, it is a gradual descent down a psychological slippery slope. The authority trap typically begins with small, seemingly innocuous requests or expectations. A minor concession here, a slight adjustment of personal opinion there, a quiet agreement to a procedure that raises a faint internal murmur but appears harmless on the surface. Each act of compliance, however small, sets a precedent. It recalibrates our internal compass, making the next slightly larger step of obedience feel less jarring, more acceptable. This incremental process, often referred to as the foot in the door phenomenon, leverages our need for cognitive consistency. Having agreed to a small request, we are psychologically predisposed to agree to a subsequent, larger request, to maintain an image of ourselves as cooperative and consistent individuals. Challenging the authority at a later stage feels like contradicting our past actions, creating an uncomfortable state of cognitive dissonance that we instinctively seek to resolve by further conforming. It's a self-reinforcing cycle where each act of obedience justifies the next, subtly eroding the boundary between personal conviction and external command. To truly navigate this treacherous landscape, cultivating an internal locus of control becomes paramount. This involves a conscious shift from seeking validation and direction externally to rooting our decisions in an intrinsic sense of rightness and personal responsibility. It is the arduous but liberating process of building an unshakable inner compass, one that is calibrated not by the prevailing winds of social pressure or the gravitational pull of hierarchy, but by deeply considered principles and values. This internal compass isn't static. It is continuously refined through self-reflection, ethical deliberation, and the courage to honestly confront our own biases and assumptions. It means actively engaging with our conscience, giving weight to that often whispered voice of dissent, and allowing it to guide our choices, even when it leads us away from the path of least resistance. Furthermore, developing robust emotional intelligence is crucial in fortifying our defenses against the authority trap. Our decisions are rarely purely rational. They are deeply intertwined with our emotional states: fear of rejection, the desire for approval, the comfort of belonging, and the anxiety of potential repercussions can all sway us towards compliance. Emotional intelligence equips us with the capacity to recognize these internal emotional signals, to understand their origins, and to regulate their influence on our judgment. It allows us to distinguish between a genuine intuition rooted in our values and a reactive emotion driven by social anxieties. By practicing self-awareness and self-regulation, we can create a psychological space between stimulus and response, enabling a deliberate, value-aligned choice rather than an automatic, emotionally driven reaction. This practice fosters a psychological resilience that empowers us to stand firm, even when the emotional pressure to conform is intense. The daily practice of intellectual autonomy is not a grand, singular act, but a series of small, consistent choices. It involves actively questioning the information we consume, not just from overt authority figures, but from all sources that claim legitimacy. It means adopting a stance of healthy skepticism, analyzing underlying motivations, and considering alternative interpretations before accepting any premise as truth. This rigorous intellectual discipline extends beyond specific directives. It reshapes our fundamental approach to reality. We must regularly challenge our own default settings, consciously identifying situations where we might be automatically deferring to a perceived authority without due diligence. This can be as simple as pausing before sharing an article online to verify its source and content, or as profound as engaging in Socratic self-inquiry about why we hold certain beliefs. This continuous engagement with critical thought is the mental musculature we develop to resist the lure of convenient compliance, to see beyond the veneer of legitimacy, and to prevent the authority trap from ever fully ensnaring our independent spirit. It is an ongoing commitment to intellectual freedom, a vigilant guardianship of our own minds, ensuring that our actions are always an authentic expression of our deepest truths. The insidious nature of the authority trap lies not just in our innate tendencies, but in the environment we construct, brimming with cues for submission. Societies are structured with hierarchies, visually reinforced for obedience. Consider the profound effect of symbols: a uniform, a badge, a title, or an institutional setting. These are not mere trappings. They are potent psychological triggers. A person in a white lab coat instantly commands deference than in casual attire. The uniform bestows unspoken legitimacy, suggesting expertise, power, and the right to direct. This phenomenon transcends simple respect. It activates deeply ingrained patterns of compliance, where outward display of authority overrides internal caution, prompting us to accept directives without the rigorous scrutiny applied to a peer. The context itself becomes a silent, persuasive voice of command, subtly eroding our capacity for independent judgment and replacing it with almost automatic deference to perceived status. This profound influence of situational authority was starkly illuminated by landmark research. Stanley Milgram's studies in the 1960s revealed astonishing truths about how ordinary individuals, under perceived command, could perform actions deeply contrary to personal ethics. Participants believed they administered increasing electric shocks to another person, simply instructed to continue by an experimenter in a lab coat. A significant majority continued to lethal levels, despite simulated screams of distress and personal anguish. These studies unequivocally demonstrated not widespread sadism, but the extraordinary power of situational authority to compel unthinkable actions. It showcased how readily individuals transfer responsibility to the authority figure, believing themselves mere agents carrying out orders, sidestepping accountability. This mental shift, diminishing personal agency in favor of directives, is a core mechanism of the authority trap. Crucially, the trap is often reinforced by moral disengagement, allowing individuals to justify actions that would typically trigger guilt. When confronted with authoritative directives clashing with values, the mind seeks to reduce internal conflict. One powerful pathway is the displacement of responsibility, shifting blame entirely onto the authority. "I was just following orders" becomes the mantra, providing a psychological shield. Another is the diffusion of responsibility, particularly in group settings where the burden of moral decision-making is spread, making each person feel less personally accountable. Additionally, moral justification reframes harmful acts as serving a higher, legitimate purpose, transforming detrimental actions into virtuous ones. This can couple with dehumanization, where targets are stripped of humanity, easing the infliction of pain or disregard for suffering. These sophisticated psychological maneuvers act as internal enablers, dismantling moral barriers and solidifying the authority trap's hold. Escaping this pervasive trap demands a proactive and courageous stance, one demanding active, practiced resistance. It requires cultivating the ability to discern legitimate expertise from manipulative authority. A true expert informs and empowers. A manipulative authority demands unquestioning compliance. This discernment necessitates challenging implicit legitimacy often conferred by status. It means recognizing subtle manipulations like gaslighting or isolation tactics, developing a robust network of trusted peers and mentors who offer support is vital against isolating authoritative pressure. This collective critical mass strengthens individual resolve, making it less intimidating to voice dissent and challenge norms. Questioning a directive is not defiance for its own sake, but often an act of profound moral integrity, requiring courage to articulate convictions even when standing alone against a prevailing tide. Furthermore, building an ethical framework robust enough to withstand external pressures is paramount. This framework is not static, but a dynamic, lived philosophy, honed through reflection on values and actions. It involves mentally rehearsing scenarios where authority might tempt or coerce, preparing oneself for difficult choices. This foresight reduces paralysis from surprise. It means embracing the discomfort of questioning, the uncertainty of nonconformity, and potential consequences of principled stands. The path to authentic self-governance is paved with brave refusal, choosing personal conviction over convenient compliance. True freedom comes not from the absence of external pressure, but from unwavering internal strength to choose response. This cultivated moral courage is the ultimate antidote to the authority trap, transforming passive obedience into active, value-driven engagement. By consistently exercising this courage, individuals safeguard integrity and inspire others to break free from unquestioning submission, fostering a society where truth and principle hold sway over deference. Like the vibe? Subscribe and join the fun.